third Thursdays at the Willow Glen Library. I'm your host, Lisa Medley, and this is co-sponsored by Willow Glen Library and the Poetry Center San Jose. It is my pleasure to introduce Amy Meier. She was born in New York and ended up here in San Jose and created the VeteransWrite, which became Veterans of Life Right. And there's this beautiful anthology by the same name. And we're going to hear some of the contributors to that tonight. So please welcome Amy Meier.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks for inviting Veterans of Life Right to Third Thursday.
Oh, always.
Really do it's a privilege. Thanks a lot. So, online or someday again in person, it's all good. I'm in this section, I'm going to read some new stuff, which is not necessarily related to armed forces, although it could be. First poem I'm going to read is small, and it's titled November. The kitchen garden dresses for this time of year in wine, butter, toast, and coffee-colored leaves. Crows strut on their stem legs, picking through the feast, spilled seeds and berries, shelled beetles, torpid crickets, earthworms rise to bathe in light rain, then burrow back to their slow, necessary labor underground. So much packed into this small bit of earth, this tiny universe. And this next one, which is titled Allegiance, Everything Important, I learned in PS 152. And for the uninitiated to New York public schools, New York City public schools, they all have numbers. They apparently, I just found out today, they also have names that nobody ever uses. So PS 152, I intended grades 1 to 3. Allegiance. Right hand on heart, eyes on the flag, left foot scratching an itchy right leg. Above droopy lace bordered white socks. From behind, someone pulls a braid, not too hard, a friendship pull. We teach each other Skelly, double Dutch, and that game made of looped rubber bands, imported with our newest friend who's learning English. Pantomime, our common language. We pledge allegiance to a country no one has yet seen on earth. Allegiance to the dream of a nation for which it stands. Imagine a garden of mixed roses blooming sea to shining sea, above the thorns. Some of my friends know a lot about thorns, the blood they draw, the price to pay, the price already paid. They show me what is underneath romantic flowers. When I see blood on the leaves and blood at the rotting root, my friends teach me not to turn away because I can, because they can't. I promise them I won't, and I have done my best to keep that promise. And the last I'm going to read in this section, so everybody else in Veterans of Life Right can have their long turn. This is a prose poem, and it was inspired by a news story when this country started removing children from their parents as they crossed into the US border looking for asylum. And this little boy was taken from his father's arms. At that time, he spoke Spanish. When he was reunited with his parents in Guatemala, back where they had been deported, he spoke a completely different language, a boy and a dog. The small boy stops crying on a day no different than the others since he was brought to this place. He lifts his head, looks around the wire enclosure filled with long-legged coyote and moon-faced boys. He sees he's the smallest one there. He doesn't know anyone. No one looks at him. The small boy tries to remember how it felt to be held tight and secure in his father's arms. He remembers only the moment his father's arms loosened and let go. He tries to see his father's face in his mind, but it seems to have washed away. He listens, hears boys call this place doghouse. The small boy thinks, if this is a doghouse, where's the dog? He realizes his father left him here to become the doghouse dog. He gets on his hands and knees, barks. Boys laugh. One of them pats his head, another pats his back. A third rolls his socks into a ball, throws the ball across the floor. The small boy barks again, crawls to the ball, takes it in his mouth, and brings it to the boy who threw it. Boys smile at him, call him good dog, smart dog. All right, next up is Craige. Craige Edgerton came to San Jose in 1976 from Austin, Texas. He's worked as a small retail business owner, self-employed financial planner, financial consultant for Wells Fargo, and executive director for the Silicon Valley Land Conservancy. He finally found the job that suits him.
Retirement.
Yeah, he retired in 2017 and now is an avid amateur naturalist, having led many nature hikes throughout the South Bay. And parenthetically, he led us on a nature hike and it was absolutely wonderful. And he didn't have to be talked into doing this annually. I can't wait for the next one. He's also a Marine Corps combat veteran from Vietnam, having served as artillery forward observer with an infantry company. And he has recently taken up writing and now has, at the time he wrote this, 14 poems, maybe more now.
30 now, so.
There you go, more than double. Short story about his return from Vietnam and is working on his autobiography. Please welcome Craige Edgerton.
Amy, we must be thinking like you. We must be psychotic because you kind of led me right into what I was going to say about my Marine Corps service. That's a poem I'll do second. But Amy talked about last year during the spring, we did go to Coyote Valley and led a wildflower hike up there, which is kind of what I do. And part of the deal was it was this poetry group, the Veterans of Life Rights, and some other people. But I asked all of the members of the poetry group to bring a poem to share with us while we were having lunch up on the ridge. And so this is what I wrote. So does everybody, if you don't know where Coyote Ridge, it's if you go between San Jose and Morgan Hill, down Highway 101. It's the eastern ridge line that you follow all the way down. So you know where it is now. So this is the poem that I wrote while we were on Coyote Ridge with the group. A young man seeking adventure happened by this way in 1868. Free from all ties, the Wild West his glorious fate. The sleek sloop slid through the waves and swells and ocean currents around Cape Horn to dock in the city by the bay. The stories had been legend of a magical place, of peaks and valleys and majestic trees that defied logic, but full of grace. Yosemite, Yosemite was the call to his soul as he packed his life's belongings in a minuscule bedroll. He struck out on foot to explore the terrain, heading south towards Gilroy with complete free rein. As he passed through San José, a long march ahead, he paused in Coyote Valley to shelter at a farmstead. The young man recorded the sights that he saw that spring day as he gazed on the hillside and observed birds of prey. He was later to record in his meticulous journal the following quote that is now eternal of his gaze on this hillside where we are today. And I quote, "The last of the Coast Range foothills were in near view all the way to Gilroy. Their union with the valley is by curves and slopes of inimitable beauty, and they are robed with the greenest grass and richest light I ever beheld, and colored and shaded with millions of flowers of every hue, chiefly of purple and golden yellow. And hundreds of crystal rills joined the songs with the larks, filling all the valley with music like a sea, making it an Eden from end to end," end quote. By now you must have guessed this young man so pure became the saint of Yosemite, the incomparable who? John Muir.
Should we all unmute at the same time and say it in chorus?
I didn't realize everybody was muted. I guess I didn't notice. Everybody got the punchline, I hope. Yes, okay. So that is a true story. I think some of you who know John Muir did hike from San Francisco to Yosemite in 1868. The second poem has to do not with my time in Vietnam, but as a result coming back from my time in Vietnam and my years of trying to deal with that. As many of us who did serve there, it was not the most pleasant. So I titled this, "Thank You for Your Service." A young boy's fantasies, dreams of glory, built on the stories of World War II glory. In the scrub and brush of his South Texas home, he and his pals, the savannah, they did roam. Pretending to be Marines, they fought their way, creating battles among the mesquite brush and cactus decayed. And he believed the stories that were told. The fantasies and revelry never got old. It came to pass when he exited school, his dream of battle would begin to come true. The hope of that war was just that, a dream, lost and cynical in the horror of combat. An unknown land became known to all as America's pride began to fall. Leaving the Corps, disillusioned as hell, he hid his service as under a turtle's shell. Pride in the Corps was lost to the ages as he buried 3 years in his self-made cages. Who, me a Marine? Not a chance in hell, was the common refrain. His story he would not tell. Crying at movies for reasons unknown, loud noises from nowhere, his reaction overblown. Many years passed as the secret remained hidden. Reluctant to tell anyone, that path was forbidden. But like an apparition, that secret that haunted his every move, barely aware of it, but unable to remove. After 210 years, he greeted the ghost. He faced it head on, that dastardly host. Facing this spook would test his mettle. He decided it was time to get this thing settled. But in the end, when all was said and done, when the curtain was dropped and the phantom revealed, the truth of his service was made clear one day as he heard the store clerk, "Thank you for your service," is all she had to say. And he then understood. So that's partially a summation of 5 years of therapy. And I will finish on a high note. This is entitled My Sierra Nevada Home. Smells envelop my senses. The calm wetness after a healing rain releases the bay laurel's fragrance in my home mountains of St. Cruz. The dry, crisp grass of summer crackles underfoot, releases the promise of winter rain or raging fires. Fragrances create dreams and imaginings of the footloose, freedom-seeking boy searching for adventure, challenge, and his place in the world. Summer releases the pungent tarweed, the oh-so-slight, bitter perfume of the black sage, the subtle, sour fragrance of the blue lupin, or the slight aroma of the monkey flower. But most of all, the smell of summer calls me home, home to my beloved, my Sierra Nevada, the birthplace of my soul. I bless the retreat to my pure essence, the place to explore and learn and test myself, the sweetness of my cherished home, the chiseled granite of my Sierra Nevada. Those are my 3 poems.
I'm trying to unmute. There we go. So next up, Doug Nelson. Doug was in the Army in Vietnam in 1968, which for people who served. That's the year. That was the year to not be in Vietnam, but he was there. And in Japan before returning to college. Writing has helped him deal with war and with the loss of fellow soldiers. When he arrived in California in 2007, he accepted a job with the County of Santa Clara, assisting veterans with disability claims. And that is, he helped them get their disability after they, or and so they wouldn't be denied, or after they had been denied. He says his friends in the Willow Glen Poetry Project and in Veterans of Life Write are his mentors and muses. Thank you, Doug. The floor is yours.
I've been saving this poem for a larger audience and a bigger time slot. It's probably one of the longer things I've written. It's about growing up in the South and how people there feel about the Civil War that they're on some level still fighting. And I want you to get an idea of what it's like growing up with this. Gray. Monument Avenue in Richmond, Virginia runs east to west so that Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, and J.E.B. Stewart cast evening shadows half a block up the street. And in the morning, they loom out of the mist. Even as a child, I knew who they were. Lee's middle name was Edward. Stonewall was Thomas Jonathan Jackson, and Stewart was James Ewell Brown Stewart. Lee was a stern figure who set a horse well, got no demerits at West Point, and commanded all the Southern armies. Jackson was a brilliant, audacious field commander who led end runs around the enemy and surprised them in their camps in the late evening. And Stewart was a cavalry commander who wore a flowing cape lined in red, rode a famous reconnaissance around the Union Army surrounding Richmond, and encouraged fiddles and banjos in his camps. My grandmother told me from the glider on her shady front porch that her father, George Washington Stone, fought for the South, that he witnessed his own father killed in street fighting in Lewisburg, West Virginia, from which he told me that when he came home, he seemed lost, not able to hold a job. He rolled an embedded musket ball around his elbow joint for his little red-haired girl's entertainment. I impressed my teachers with my knowledge of the battles on those now grassy fields or parking lots, and of their opponent generals in blue. My high school had a military band. We wore uniforms of Confederate gray and marched to Dixie. We were tied to Southern soldiers by gray uniforms, by standing for the playing of Dixie, and by a certain reverence for the Confederate flag, drawn on our school book covers or carved in school desks. My father took me to a Ku Klux Klan meeting in a field because it was a few miles away and because the city was declaring that they were going to let Black students go to our schools. Adults in white robes and pointy hoods burned a cross like the ones I saw in church, from which I gathered no significance or meaning, only bewilderment. I just knew that Black students were going to be on our sports teams, in our band, and in our classes. Our parents were upset. We kids waited to see whether our Black classmates ran with the ball, played their music, did their homework, or laid low. They did everything we did and as well. I sat with the Negroes in the back of the city bus that took me to and from school, not out of empathy for their being required to sit there, but because it upset old white people. They muttered when I gave my seat to an elderly, crippled Black woman and let her hold my books when she offered. Still, I gave too little thought to the clear facts that my forefathers fought to preserve an economy and social order based on the buying and selling of helpless people, capricious uses of men, women, and children, and holding the power of life and death over them. Even Robert E. Lee had runaway slaves flogged. The old soldiers and their generals were ghosts of gray, haunting Richmond in the grown-over battlefields where they fought, so that we dug up in our garden a bullet, a uniform button, and a small cannonball. Confederate ghosts garrisoned my thoughts when I tried to read roadside historical markers from our moving car that pointed out the 7 days battles to save Richmond. The ghosts of Black people were also great at me, obscured in fog, faded in time, forgetfulness, and in societally imposed distance. I could hear their conversation on work crews, joking and laughing, and their hymn singing from outside their churches. No Black people went to my church or came to my house. If I could not hear their moans and cries as they sat in rows chained together, sitting for months, seasick below the decks of slave ships, their legs straddling the person in front of them, it was not because I could not read those accounts. It was because my heart was not listening. My questioning of the order of things began with a church pastor, an academic who set us junior high school kids down and gently told us that nothing in the Bible justified considering other people as inferior. A fellow college student who generally brushed aside my protestations defending the South, and finally, Black, Latino, Oregon, and California soldiers, their arguments sometimes as simple as, "You don't really believe that shit, do you?" I did until I didn't any longer. General Lee had said emphatically that he did not want monuments to himself. I must tell you, sir, you and my ancestors you commanded, and we soldiers who have followed you in our country's wars, have lived to see our fame and glory fade as history is questioned, researched, and rewritten. That my war was as unnecessary, misguided, and no more successful than yours. They put up fine statues to you and your generals, artful works of sculpture, gleefully erected anyway in the 1930s in a flurry of enthusiasm for the lost cause, and an in-their-face statement to occupation by a Union Army, Reconstruction, the New Deal, Black education, Black enterprise, and Black self-government. Black people have shoved the history books right back in their faces, saying in no uncertain terms that their lives do matter, have always mattered, and that they will not tolerate any more lynching, murder by paid civil servants, and justice that differs by skin color, and that they fully intend to vote and don't even think of standing in their way. Public opinion is more than swayed. That tree is bending until it is broken. The generals on their horses are, as we speak, being taken down, not melted down, but put in dusty museums where those who hold on to them as a fetish can visit them until no one visits anymore. Race is as black and white an issue as the light of history reveals. Call it what you will, it happened in just that way. Failing so long to take a stand was gray, the neutral color of compartmental thinking, of ignorance, of non-commitment. Army camouflage looks gray in the dark, confusing what they told me as a child with what really happened. I won't be reading that at a high school reunion.
Powerful.
You Californians don't get off easy. You ever seen this book? I need to hold it up. Here we go.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, Ishi, sure.
Ishi walked onto a ranch in 1911, nearly starving. He was the last remaining free Indian. He lived at the University of Berkeley in the Anthropology Museum until he died in 1916. I wrote a little piece about Ishi's people. We were happy enough. We gathered or caught all our food, our nuts, acorns, berries, fish, and deer, using tools we made ourselves with our own hands. Nothing belonged to us. It was all a whirl of which we were part. It was you who told us about property, ownership, clothes, and Jesus. I was a tiny child when you whipped my father because he ran off to hunt deer, and my mother because she went to gather acorns. You wanted my mother and all the other mothers to wash your sheets and clothes, and my father and all the other fathers to dig your gardens. We had words for everything in our world, just as you do. But you wouldn't let us use our words. The strangest word of all is your word, love. We have no such word because we treated each other as brothers and sisters. We had fights with other people of our kind, just as you do. But after that, we made peace. You told us Jesus loves us, but only when we work for you and use your words. I think it makes more sense to sing to the sun and the water and the living things that walk, crawl, swim, and fly in our world. One day we shall see how happy you are.
Very good. Very good.
That's great. Oh,
I
yeah.
went in the Army in '67. I hated that hat.
Who is that?
Who is that? I hated that hat, and I hated the birth control glasses, we called them. We
Yep.
called them that because no girl would, if we showed up in those, would have anything to do with us.
You don't need to explain that, Doug.
My parents told me my dog had died. And I thought, that was a few days ago, I suppose. But hopefully Blackie, on his way out, walking down the alley one last time, must have had something he would like me to know. A letter from Blackie. Last time I saw you, Douglas, you were getting into your daddy's car with a big, long green bag, wearing some green suit with metal buttons of a color I'd never seen you in before, and a silly green hat on like the one the dog catcher wears. I growled at you in that hat till you got closer. You stopped by the backyard to rest your hand on top of my head the way you always did when you left to go to school, stroking my ears and the back of my neck. I had no idea where you were going and how long you'd be there, but there was a somber mood to you I'd never felt before. And just like that, you were gone from me forever. You and Dave, your younger brother, the boys only 5 and 6, who held me in your lap in the back of Daddy's car 14 years ago and kept holding me even after I'd peed on you. You, the boys who took me as your own, who brought me my food and made sure I didn't sleep on the ground. Neither of you ever knowingly hurt me, pulling on where they cut off my long tail for some stupid fashion, or tugged too hard on my dangling Cocker Spaniel ears. You, the boys who played chasing games with me and threw a rubber sponge ball. You know, I never got it with fetching. I just chased the ball and lost interest when it stopped rolling. You, Doug, who chased after me and yelled at the guy driving the car who hit me in the street and who took us both to a vet and gave me an aspirin to help with my hurting head. You wanted to sit up all night with me, but Mom made you go to bed. You must know I led a pretty humdrum life. I suppose you thought I was smiling when I sat with my tongue hanging out. You know, I had black fur and it was damn hot. For me, fun was dashing out of the yard when you boys opened the gate so that you chased me down the alley in the next street yelling, Blackie. I would have liked to run and play with other dogs, but I never got it with walking on a leash. I'd squat on my haunches and do my, I ain't doing this stuff act. Spot lived across the alley with your Aunt Bertha and her 3 boys. Their mom took a broom to Spot after she saw him pull her clean sheets off the clothesline. And then one day, Spot was gone. A few times I felt an urgency to chase a female dog so that I ran a lot faster and farther and came back to the yard only when I could not catch up with her and decided to come home. You brought a teenage girl home once. I sensed your attraction to her, touching her hand in ways you never touched anyone else's. Surely you got it with me chasing the neighbor's female dog, or did you? No one yelled at you. I'm sorry I couldn't wait for you to come home. I just couldn't hang on any longer. No one was mean to me. They just stopped coming over to pat my head. It was like I wasn't there. Do this for me, will you? If you get another dog in your life, treat him kindly. Make sure he's welcome in your house. Better still, if you don't want to take care of a dog, leave cute little puppies where they are. And you know, I'm no expert on this, but if you want to attract a female someone, ditch that freaking hat.
Love it, every bit of it. Wonderful. All right, well, Gail's got to top that, unfortunately, but she's ready for that.
Yes, she's up to it.
She is. So Gail Matthews retired from a full career in the U.S. Air Force in 1994, having gone through the commingling of women into the regular military forces, the Vietnam era, the Cold War, the Gulf War. Trying to work through a number of traumas, she eventually encountered creative arts programs, which transcended all gender, education, background, age, and experience levels. This was and is an ideal fit for her. She's also a rock hound that loves learning new things, seeing what's over the next hill, poking into worldwide museums of all types, creating in multiple art mediums, and rediscovering her early love of poetry. For her, creative arts are an essential mechanism to focus her thoughts and words. So her current endeavor is to reconnect and reinforce this expression through poems. Bring you, Gail, a force of creative nature.
What an introduction.
If you didn't write it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I had that last sentence in there.
No, I don't know.
Okay. I'll be reading my submission into this year's Veterans Annual Creative Arts Festival. And regionally, this entry won in its category of special recognition in the creative writing division. It has a narrative intro explaining how poetry helps me heal, and then the poem. As a result of service-connected physical and mental health issues, my abilities to focus on and synthesize down the problems bothering me have been severely impaired. Words and emotions, which are extensively used in VA treatments, are difficult for me to access, especially on a timely basis. To initiate the healing process for my varied traumas, an initial step based in creating artworks is needed. This foundation is essential for providing a visual stimulus to evoke word pictures as a means of overcoming my physical and mental impediments to accurate communications. The artworks then provide a guide for establishing a focal topic and staying on point. Visual imagery leads to verbal imagery, thus expanding my ability to focus and to identify the problems I need to resolve. It creates a mechanism for interacting with my providers. The group therapy rhyming poem is a prime example of how this works. Visualizing the scenes which impede therapy attendance facilitates their exposure. Conjuring rhythms and rhyming words makes the issues vulnerable to dissection and eventual dismissal. Overall progress with this technique is slow, with repetition needed. Yet for me, using visual and verbal descriptions in this manner has proven to be both essential and effective. I highly endorse all programs emphasizing these methods, hence providing the unique benefits as described. So my poem is entitled Misery and Company in Group Trauma Therapy. Deep in our head, adhered to the bed, fearful of places most haven't tread, glued by thoughts of events unsaid. Often misread while hung by a thread, dreaming of the useful life instead. Habits inbred, ready to be shed, yearning to be free from shadowed dread. In from the street on hesitant feet, we edge through the door to find a seat, longing for guidance from our defeat. Hoping to meet those on the same sheet whose skills and jobs became obsolete. Once the elite with honor replete, now baffled by feeling incomplete. With candid spunk, we open the trunk, amazed by the concepts we have thunked, yet revealing all, it never stunk. Spun into funk, abiding the drunk, with thoughts, dreams, and goals going kerplunk. Since we've not slunk from feelings that sunk, our pain and strain, hopefully, has shrunk. Fashion our fate before it's too late. Control events before they inflate. Remove mail and mounds that inundate. Trim 50 weight, find a special mate. Fulfill every desire on the slate. Won't it be great when we drop old freight, becoming the new life we create? And that's it.
That's great.
Like a winner.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now you just have to memorize it so you can be right in there with the young ones.
Something like that.
Okay, next up, Nick, also known as Nikki.
Yeah. That's a good enough. That's a good enough intro.
That's it. That's all. Nick claims it's not the world that changes us, it's everything else. But that's because both Nick and Nikki are a little enigmatic. A true bibliography, he says, is dying of 1,000 lives, 1,000 times a day. That's what he said. Nick served in the U.S. Navy Reserve from 1983 to 1993, active duty during Operation Desert Storm and Desert Shield, 1990 and 1991. He's been working as a family practice nurse practitioner for 20 years with Homeless Project and Gardner's South County Community Clinic in Gilroy. Nick has participated in 3 anthologies sponsored by Poetry Center San José and helped co-facilitate VeteransWrite, now renamed the Veterans of Life Right group. Nick.
Okay. So that photo that Doug shared, I was actually, Lisa Medley posted a photo of her brother and it looked like the same, somebody I'd seen in boot camp. So I dug out my book that they give you in boot camp in 1984. So this is the, does it say the anchor? Yeah. So this is the book. So I was looking for photos. I didn't find your brother. I found a tailor, but he was from Alabama, so I don't think that was it. But I did find a photo of me. I think, I don't know if this shows. There. That's me 30 years ago or 40 years ago.
I think Doug would agree that's a better hat.
Yeah, I like that hat. It was a good hat. Let's see. Which one was I going to do? Okay, I wrote this, I think Tuesday and finished it Wednesday. It's called Clear as Gravy. It's about the holidays. Oh, I won't talk politics. And during the holidays, I'll be thankful, as I always am, for truth and what it means to me. Life, death, a birth, and what it means to sacrifice. Oh, it's just that I'm greedy with my time, and I won't argue with another opinion, which should rhyme with onion, and must be the reason for the tears, because war comes from our fear. I'd rather talk about playing football in the snow and the seeds in spring I'll plant and watch grow. But politics, Turkey, dressing, pumpkin pie, maybe Christmas I'll buy you a Grinch that stole Christmas tie. This coming year I'll be glad to give our opinions a rest, or at least I'll try. That one. This one, in our group, we had a prompt and it was about what words mean to us. It says poems. Okay, this poem's called What Words Don't Mean. When your eyes no longer met mine, then I knew my words had lost. They failed to keep your eyes listening. Instead, your eyes lowered and became moist and reddened. 3 kids, no residency papers, a Guatemalan father and a corrupt husband left behind, and no possibility of returning to her family, friends, and way of life she grew up with. In clinic, reviewing her 4 prescription medicines for uncontrolled diabetes was not a priority for her. Words are meant to be welcome. They can be harsh, but they can also heal, and don't always mean the same thing they mean to others. Words can become someone else's humble pie that feeds anyone who listens. Sometimes words don't mean what I meant, but it doesn't mean I don't care. Thanks. This one's called Sticky Words. I haven't read this one, but it was with the word prompt. Sticky words. It must have been ionic bonds that glued us together. Without sight or sound, a thought was formed. Those that can't see or hear can feel a word, like the heartbeat of a baby chick in your hands, and all the stars in the sky, and the light trying to shine through the darkness. I remember the sun and how it felt on my face. At dusk, you held my hand. Only when blind and deaf do I feel you. Bonds, when broken, become atomic. Maybe God just wanted to see your face and kiss you. Words are thoughts that fill spaces. so you'll no longer hear what is said through thick walls, but face to face, as it is and always was. That's all I got today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. All right. And finally, Jeffrey Leonard without his hat. So Jeffrey served in the US Army between 1966 to 1968, drafted out of San Jose State. He trained as an 11C40, leaving the service as an E5. He is a 12th generation descendant of men who have served in every major US conflict dating back to pre-revolutionary America. A survivor of the Vietnam era, he's drawn to the stories of returning soldiers and how their lives unfold after they remove the uniform. And Jeffrey is also, along with Nick, co-facilitator for the Veterans of Life-Right. Jeffrey.
Co-facilitator. Welcome. So good to be here. This autumn has really taught me with several old friends who have passed. And I've reached an age now where I seem to be writing a lot of elegies. And anyway, I'm going to read an autumnal elegy that I wrote for a friend who passed back in 2017, and I finally got around to writing one for her in 2019. And it was sponsored by being in Sally Ashton's class in the autumn of 2019, before the pandemic. It's called Yvonne's Yellow Daffodils, and it has an epigram. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. A Jewish prayer of remembrance. It's been just over 2 years when news of your passing sent me planting 60 daffodil bulbs to remember you by. 40 more last year, amplified garden color, further deepened remembrance of your love of how beauty first begins, underground. Capricorn sister, brilliantly you intuited qualities required to create gardens of Hera, only for modern mortals. Yvonne, you departed that autumn, our favorite season. Now my garden begins to express the ritual of death. In my garden, the poet Stanley Kunitz whispers in my ear, Jeffrey, we are all a compost pile waiting to happen. In a dream, we stand in the walkway of a garden. Fragrance of salvia and sage astonish us. Bees sing and strut atop blue, purple flowers. Hummingbird hovers nearby, suggesting reverence, gratitude equally. Today, while remembering you, I dug 8 new holes. Subterranean nests for narcissus bulbs. I hear Kunitz softly confessing, I am never closer to the miraculous than when I am grubbing in the soil. In less than 2 months, winter arrives. Unseen mysteries will be rampant underfoot. Come late February, your daffodils, the heralds of spring, will stand erect like green soldiers with heads of bright yellow. And so it goes every spring. a resurrection of remembrance for you, Yvonne, designer of numerous gardens of enchantment. So my good friend Yvonne Goldman had passed in October 27th of 2017. She was a landscape gardener, an artist, wife, mother extraordinaire. She was an astute student of the world's gardens, and she applied her knowledge in the South Bay and along the peninsula. And I was most fortunate to be a part of her life. And she went to Los Altos High. This is a more recent poem, which I read recently for my friends, Veterans of Life Write. And it's similar to what Nick had written about words. Mine go in a different direction. As one Zen teacher has written, our words, public and private, can wound or heal. I've had a passion for words all my conscious life. Beautiful, tender, sublime, exalted, inspiring words. I keep at the ready, locked and loaded, to be used when necessary in times of healing and mending. I've familiarized myself with the hurtful words, the words that wound and destroy. Hurtful words make their way from the battlefields of ignorance, greed, and envy. Indeed, verbal gunfire and explosives can lead to wounds that beg to be healed. One should know these words well enough to guard against their unlikely use, interacting with loved ones or with complete strangers. Yes, admittedly, I love words. I'm a regular logophile, attracted to essays, novels, histories, spiritual tomes, most easily lured and tempted by the charms of poetry. For a moment, please, hold gently my beloved poetry six-shooter. Its silver bullets contain words of packed poetry powder. Now, softly squeeze off a round. Don't be afraid. There's only a Shakespearean sonnet to gently strike the lucky recipient. What did the word say? And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. Oh yes. Oh, this revolver has still 5 unspent poems. Shall we go on? Do I have a villanelle in one of the heart chambers? No, the rhyming scheme is too challenging for my poem. But yes, I have a haiku. Please take aim. It's a basho bullet with a 575 syllable poem about an old temple, some peach blossoms, and rice. Could you locate the Kigo? An ekphrastic poem is contained in bullet 4. Where does this interesting word come from? Ekphrasis comes from the Greek word for description. Go ahead, please pull the trigger. Oh, wow, a poem about blue horses, painted by Franz Marc. Whew, how could you describe them? Mary Oliver's poem may provide inspiration. Half of our poetry ammunition has been spent. The third bullet makes a design, a particular shape or form on the page. It's easier now to squeeze the trigger gently. This is called a concrete poem. Oh yeah, it's in the form of a heart. The words are so lovely, heartfelt. Some are in Spanish. Mi corazón y mi amor. Okay, we're down to 2 poetic projectiles, bursting with words. The words found in the second bullet follows the death of someone written in mourning, and it's called an elegy. I like that word. The sorrowful bullet poem recalls Whitman's "Oh, Captain, my Captain," following the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Now, the final poetry packed bullet is whatever words produced by Third Thursday. Willow Glen Poets, yeah. Their monthly creative efforts feature all forms of poetic expression and types. One thing this final bullet manifests: camaraderie and support, and most noteworthy, a love of words.
Great. That's great, Gail. Thank you.
You covered it. So, Lisa, how are we doing on time? We're running over, I think.
Well, I don't think so. I think we're doing good. I think we're all enjoying it.
No, we're enjoying it. I just wonder what you have in mind for time, needing to leave time for the
You're
open mic.
good. Well, the usual third Thursdays is scheduled from 7 to 9, so we're doing good.
Oh, good. Okay. So what's next? That's our
You need to close this out with a poem.
Okay,
Close out this section with the poem. So we need to hear another one from you.
okay. I will read the poem that closes out the book. Power of poetry.
Mhm.
Poetry can be a voice in the wilderness, the voice of the wilderness, heartbeat, drumbeat. Poetry and a microphone can bring a nation to attention. Poetry can demand the right to heal, reject the pretense of resilience, untwist the strands of pride and shame, honor sacrifice. Poetry can be what you make it. Give voice to the ones who didn't make it. Bear witness. Whatever you want to say, poetry can be. Thank you again, Lisa.
Oh, thank you, Amy, and thank all your wonderful readers. It was just a wonderful poetry. And it was terrific to see you and hear you all again, too. I missed our in-person ones, dang it.
Yeah.
Have to
Amy,
get
who wrote
together
that
as
last-
soon as we can.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But-
Amy, who wrote that last poem?
Thank you. It's so wonderful to see you all. Thank you. Thank you.